Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. If you are new here, I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup video. Today we have got, I hate to say it, but another crazy case. This case is a case of Carl Tanzler, who was born in Germany and eventually emigrated to the US, where he would become fixated on a young woman by the name of Maria Elena. He believed that she was his soulmate, that he had apparently been shown in his dreams as a child from an ancestor. Now, Maria was a patient in the hospital that Carl Tanzler worked in. She was committed there with tuberculosis, and he wanted to fix her. And when he couldn't, when she passed away, he would take her body and basically make his own little doll out of her. Yeah, it's that bad. And there is also speculation that Carl Tanzler murdered Maria Elena so he could fulfill his destiny. So I'm going to get into all of that today with you. I hope you enjoy this case. It is honestly insane. Any case suggestions that you have can be left down below or sent to my email. Details of what's been used on my face is also down below. Don't forget to subscribe and put the notification bell on so you don't miss when I upload, which is every Wednesday and Sunday. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the case of Carl Tanzler. So Carl Tanzler was born on February the 8th, 1877 in Dresden, Germany. Now, there's not a whole lot known about Carl's childhood, but we do know that he was born and raised within the German Empire, but he did then move to Australia before the outbreak of World War I. And despite there not being that much known about Carl's childhood, we do know from his brief stay in Germany and also his travelling through Genoa, Italy in his childhood, he said that he would be visited by a spirit, almost, like a spirit of a woman, particularly an ancestor by the name of Anna Constantia von Kossel. And this woman apparently showed him his soulmate, shall we say. And it was this dark-haired, exotic woman who was absolutely beautiful. This was meant to be Carl's soulmate. Now, it's also worth mentioning that the visions that Carl used to have of this apparent soulmate of his, these would continue throughout his life. Even when he moved back to Germany in 1920, when he met and married a woman by the name of Doris Schaefer, he was still having these visions of this spirit coming to him and telling him who his true soulmate was. Now, Carol and Doris, after they were married, they went on to have 2 daughters together. So that was Ayesha and Clarissa Tanzler. Now, devastatingly, Clarissa would pass away when she was just 10 years old from diphtheria. So Carl Tanzler went on to emigrate from Germany to the United States in 1926, and he did this by sailing. So he sailed from Rotterdam on February the 6th, 1926, and he went to Havana in Cuba, and then from there he went to Zephyr Hills in Florida. Now, it was quite lucky for Carl where he was immigrating because his sister already lived in Zephyr Hills, so he had someone there to be with him until his wife and daughters eventually moved to be with him as well. Also, I'm just going to address the elephant in the room, right? His name is Carl Tanzler. I'm Scottish, I cannot say Carl, we say Carol. Sorry. Now, once Carol's wife and 2 daughters had came over to join him in Zephyr Hills, he then moves in 1927 to Key West, Florida under the name Carl von Kossel, and he winds up getting a job as a radiology technician at the US Marine Hospital. But like, why are you moving your wife and kids out there just to leave them again? You know, like, and let's take note of the fact that the ancestor that was apparently showing him his future wife, future soulmate, her name was Anna Constantia von Kossel. Now, Carl von Kossel. So let's skip forward to April 22nd, 1930. Carl is very much still working within the US Marine Hospital, and he meets on this day a Cuban American woman by the name of Elena Maria Milagro de Hoyos, and she was beautiful. Beautiful. She was exotic looking, she had dark hair, she was just this gorgeous woman, and she was actually known in the area for being beautiful. Like, people knew of her because of her looks. Carl seen her, and immediately he recognised her as the woman whose face he was shown in his visions from the spirit ancestor woman type gal. This was the woman that was deemed to be his soulmate, according to him. So Maria Elena was born in 1909, and she was just 17 years old when she got married to a man by the name of Louis Mesa in 1926. Now, unfortunately, their marriage would end shortly after. Now, because Maria Elena had miscarried their child, Louis believed that he didn't really love her anymore, and he kind of blamed her for having this miscarriage, despite it being completely out of Maria Elena's control. So he wound up moving away to Miami, and he left Maria Elena in Key West all by herself. Now, as if she hadn't already been through enough, the reason that Maria and Carol wound up meeting was because Maria had to go into the hospital for an examination, and she was actually diagnosed with tuberculosis. Now, at the time that her and Carol met, Carol would be 53 and Maria Elena would be 20 years old. Now, if you've ever studied history or anything like that, then you will know that back in this time, tuberculosis was almost always fatal. Like, this was a fatal disease at the time, and it was a disease that would actually go on to claim most of Maria Elena's immediate family members. Like, so many of them got tuberculosis and then died from it. Now, like I said, Carl Tanzler, he was a radiology technician. He specialised in radiology, but he thought that because him and Maria Elena were meant to be together, that he would be able to find a cure for her disease. So he basically took on Maria Elena's medical care with absolutely no knowledge on how to treat tuberculosis. So he would go as far as taking x-ray equipment home to her house. He would also bring home different medicines for her in an attempt to cure her, because he was obsessed and he was going to be with her one way or another. Now, over the next 18 months, Carl Tanzler would shower Maria Elena in gifts of jewellery, just gifts in general to make her feel really special. And I just want to remind you at this point that Carl Tanzler's wife and children are still back home in Zephyr Hills, Florida. Yeah, he's doing all this whilst he's still married. And at this point, Maria Elena is still legally married to Louis Mesa. It's getting messy. At one point, Carol did confess his love to Maria Elena, and despite her, gratitude for everything Carol was doing for her, she just didn't care about him that way. She was grateful for him, but she didn't love him. She wasn't in love with him at all. Unfortunately, on October the 25th, 1931, Maria Elena would succumb to her illness. Unfortunately, she would pass away from tuberculosis. She was unable to get a cure for her disease, and to say Carol was distraught would be an understatement. And it's just devastating to think that at this period of time, tuberculosis just was basically uncurable, to be absolutely honest. I mean, when Maria Elena died, she was only 22 years old with her whole life ahead of her, and it just got cut short. So after Maria Elena has passed away, Carol goes directly to Maria's family, and he says that he insists on paying for her funeral. All the expenses, he wanted to make it special and he wanted to pay for it for her. And obviously the family were extremely grateful for this. I mean, funerals, if you see them nowadays, definitely aren't cheap, but for a family struggling back then would have been very difficult to do something nice. So they were incredibly grateful for Carol's generosity in this instance. And even more generously, Carol had requested permission from them to commission a construction of an above ground mausoleum in Maria's honour, have her in a mausoleum. And they agreed to this. Again, very grateful of his generosity. And once this mausoleum was constructed, Carol would visit Maria almost on a nightly basis, like every single day. So as I was saying, obviously Carol is visiting Maria Elena's body on an almost nightly basis. Then one night in April of 1933, Carl Tanzler goes to Maria's mausoleum that he had constructed for her. He creeps through the graveyard, it's pitch black, no one around, and he steals her body from her mausoleum. He then puts her in like a toy wagon, yes, a toy wagon, and carts her through the cemetery and takes her home to his house. Now, Tanzler would go on to say that every time he visited Maria Elena's grave, she would join him and come and sit next to him whilst he was visiting her, and she would serenade him with one of her favourite Spanish songs. And once she had been finished serenading him, she would then beg Carol to take her body home so they could be together. According to Carol, this is what he says, that Maria Elena begged him to take her body home so they could be together. She didn't want you in life, Carol. I don't think she's going to want you in death. So Carol heads home with Maria's body. Now, let's just remember, it had been 2 years since Maria had been buried. Her corpse was in an advanced state of decomposition, right? So this is like, she's going to smell. I'm just saying it, she is going to smell because her body is decaying. So Carol gets her home, and his first thing that he's going to do with Maria is fix her. Fix her. So the first thing that Carol starts to do is he grabs some piano wire and he starts securing Maria Elena's limbs back to her torso. Yeah, she was so heavily decaying at this point that her limbs had come away from her torso, and he's still taking her body out of her place of rest. It's just so disrespectful beyond belief. But once he had done that, he starts to replace her decaying skin with silk that's been soaked in wax and plaster to almost make a coating, a case over her. Now, her hair had fallen out of her skull, again because of the decomposition. So with the hair that had fell out of her skull, Carol proceeds to make a wig. Yep, he makes her a wig and fits that to her head. Then filled her corpse with like rags and cloths, and he would stuff this to try and keep Maria Elena's natural body shape. He wanted to have like all her curves in the right places. He just wanted her to look like her, okay? So after he's done his fixing of her body, he's like, you know, there is a bit of a stench. You know, it's a corpse after all, there's a smell. So Zaflora enters the chat, right? He starts using like disinfectants and soaps and sprays on her to try and get her smelling nice again. Like, how are you gonna cover up the stench of decaying flesh? You won't. But he thought, you know, a bit of Sift, a bit of Zaflora is gonna do God's work. Now, Carl Tanzler would sleep with Maria Elena's body in his bed every single night, and there was also later evidence that concluded that he would perform necrophilic acts on her body as they found a tube inserted into her vagina. Yeah. Like, he was treating her like his very own living doll, or not even a living doll, just his own doll. He was like dressing her up on the daily, getting her ready to do things when she wasn't going anywhere. And rumours did start to fly around town because Carol was spotted dancing with Elena's corpse at his open window. He had a window open, people could see in, and he was dancing with Maria's corpse in front of the whole street. Now, obviously, these rumours are flying around everywhere, so Maria's family are obviously going to hear these rumours. So once they hear it, they decide that it's time to confront Carol, and they contact the police and get investigators onto the case. Now, investigators would soon confirm to Maria's family that their suspicions were in fact correct. Carl Tanzler had taken their family member's body from her grave and used it for his own purposes. He had been living with her body for 7 years. 7 years. What? Now, of course, Carl Tanzler would be arrested, and he was charged with wantonly and maliciously destroying a grave and removing a body without authorisation. Now, Carl Tanzler would undergo psychiatric evaluation to see, you know, what his problem was, basically, and that evaluation determined that he was in fact perfectly competent to stand trial, despite saying the following: I wanted to take Elena high into the stratosphere so that the radiation from outer space could penetrate her tissues and restore life to her somnolent form. Yeah, that sounds like a well man. Yeah, definitely competent. Yeah. Now, unbelievably, the statute for limitations for the crimes that Carl Tanzler had committed had expired by the time that he had been arrested, so he was let go free of any charges. Like, even if you're not going to charge him, which he absolutely should have been, but you quite clearly know this is an unwell man. Like, it's obvious, it's in front of your face. Like, why are you not at least hospitalising him to get some help? Now, obviously, Maria Elena's family were devastated at this. They wanted some form of justice for her. Her body's been removed and destroyed from the grave. However, despite Maria Elena's family being very angry regarding Carol's release, the locals actually had a lot of compassion for him, and a lot of deluded women out there said, "Oh, he's just a hopeless romantic." What? Now, after discovering Maria Elena's body, her body was taken to be examined by pathologists and physicians. Then her body was also taken to the Dean Lopez funeral home, where she was basically put on display to be viewed by almost 7,000 people, which is just so wrong. Like, her body has been completely defaced. Like, I'll insert photos because there's nothing graphic about them apart from when you think about the fact that this is someone's body that he's done this to, but he completely destroyed her body. Now, eventually, Maria Elena's body would be returned to the Key West Cemetery, but she was buried then in an unmarked grave to prevent Carl Tanzler finding her and doing any further tampering. Why are we putting this poor woman in an unmarked grave like some kind of criminal? All because you're worried that this guy's going to find her body again and do the same. It's like, well, shouldn't you lock him up so he can't do the same? I think that is so wrong. So as I had said earlier, there was evidence later discovered that Carl Tanzler had been performing necrophilic acts on Maria Elena's body, and this was confirmed by 2 physicians who had attended her autopsy, who had seen the tube that was inserted into her vagina to allow penetration to happen. Then in 1944, Tanzler had moved to Pasco County in Florida, and this would be closer to Zephyr Hills, so closer to his wife. Remember, he has a wife and his children. Now, when he had moved to Pasco County, he did go on to write an autobiography, and this would appear in pulp publication Fantastic Adventures in 1947. Like I'd said, his new home would be closer to his wife, and Doris did actually help look after Carl Tanzler in his later years, despite everything that he put her through. Crazy, what a good woman. It wouldn't be me. So obviously now, Tanzler does not have access to Maria Elena's body, so he uses a death mask to create basically a life-sized effigy of Maria Elena, and he would sleep with this, he would spend his days with this, right up until he died at the age of 75. Now, Carl Tanzler died on July the 3rd, 1952, and his body was not found until 3 weeks after his passing. Now, some sources do actually report that Carl Tanzler did in fact still have Maria Elena's body at the time of his death. Apparently, he kept her body and another one was buried in her place to look like her body had been given back. They seem to think that her body was either returned to him or it was switched and never put back in the first place. And so people believe that he died with Elena's real body. Where this case gets even crazier is in 1982, renovations were being done in the home of Carl Tanzler, and they had found a note. And it was a note from Carol basically confessing to the fact that he had poisoned Elena to kill her, to put her out of her misery. And this is what the note said. "She died because I gave this to her mercifully. I mixed a root of wolfsbane and ansonite diluted. It was palatable. And my loved one departed this miserable world on October the 25th, 1931. Suffer no more, sweet Elena. I have sent you to the angels with my golden elixir." And an acquaintance of Carl Tanzler had actually commented and said that Carl Tanzler said if he had to kill Elena to fulfill his destiny, he would. I am so excited to hear what you think on this case because I think it is absolutely insane. But do you think that Carl Tanzler killed Maria Elena so he could take her body? Like, what do you think? At first, I was kind of like, nah, I just think he's like grave robbed and stolen her body. But the more I looked into it, the more I was like, do you know what? He might have killed her to take her body. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts, feelings and opinions down below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss when I upload. Put the notification bell on. I do upload 2 times per week at the moment on Wednesdays and Sundays, but I do hope that I can get it a bit more frequent. I'd like to do more videos, so hopefully if I can grow my channel and grow my audience, then one day I might be able to. But I really hope you enjoyed this case. Please let me know down below in the comments what case you would like to see next, or if you go in my description you can get my email address which you can send your case suggestions to as well. My social media handles are left down below for you, so my Instagram and my TikTok, but ultimately just make sure you subscribe to my channel. All details of what I've used on my face today is also linked down below in case there's anything that you're interested down there. But that is it for another true crime and makeup episode, and until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye!